Is this the end for FFP as we know it? Nobody likes it. Everybody's trying to avoid it. The Premier League can't even seem to enforce it. And they are about to go into a big hearing with the lawyers, the power of Manchester City. I wonder if we're about to reach a natural end or a very big pivot for FFP. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll give you mine and hopefully we can have a good debate about it. Timing wise, I do think it's pertinent now with what has just happened with Leicester City and what is about to happen with the Manchester City hearing. In terms of Leicester, I mean, I've said plenty on the channel, but surely if you were an independent regulator and you're looking at what has just gone on with the Leicester City situation where the Premier League essentially just look absolutely stupid, don't they? And Leicester's lawyers have gone, no, we weren't a member, you can't charge us, and there's nothing you can do about it. No. And the Premier League have been found to be incorrect on everything they've done. I wonder if you are an independent regulator looking at that might be some evidence that the Premier League and the football authorities need a bit of help maintaining their spending controls. And as for Manchester City, I mean, this is not strictly a P&S FFP issue with the 115 charges, but there's a big portion of this that is going to be looking at the associated third-party transactions. And I forget the journalist I was watching when I was preparing for this video, but he said very wisely, there's almost no point having FFP rules if you can't have tight associated third-party transaction rules, because let's be honest, since FFP's got a bit stiffer over the last 6 or 7 years with the English football authorities following UEFA's rules, all anybody's been trying to do is avoid it. And that means owners either being able to put more money in under different kind of guises or kind of dress their spending up in different ways. It doesn't really seem to work, does it? Hopefully we can offer some solutions. There below, I think I've got all of them. I think that's the Hall of Shame, certainly in the top couple of divisions. Forgive me if I've missed anybody out. We can see Birmingham, Sheffield Wednesday, Derby, Reading, Forest and Everton, who I believe are the only teams who have breached FFP. Well, let's reference Leicester here, who have breached FFP and been punished for it. Forgive me again if I've missed anybody out, but I think we've covered all of these on the channel. Birmingham obviously were the first ones down in the EFL. Big losses going back to a couple of Harry Redknapp transfer windows, and the 3-year loss limit was breached. And was it a 9-point deduction reduced to 8 or a 10 reduced to 9? I can't remember. Birmingham were the first to get charged. Sheffield Wednesday was a really interesting one. They got -6. Sheffield Wednesday were the first team to actually get charged and get relegated with a points deduction, where I know it's not quite that simple. If you added the points back on, they wouldn't have got relegated. But I think a stadium sale was put in the wrong year of accounts. And I mean, this is where we get into the ridiculous situation of what everyone's trying to do to avoid it. The fact that you're selling stadiums and leasing the stadium back to you and paying a rental on it to get one big chunk of money come in. It's stupid, isn't it? Come on. That particular loophole has been closed after plenty of clubs tried to do it, including Derby County there. Derby's a really interesting one because theirs was a lot based on amortisation and amortisation of players. In some ways, they were quite ahead of the curve, Derby, even though ultimately it became what they fell over. But everybody now talks about contract lengths and depreciation of players and player value at year 1 as opposed to player value at year 5. God, we just want to watch some blokes score some goals, don't we? Or women as well, if you're a fan of women's football. We're talking about the men's game here. We're talking about FFP. And nobody has had more FFP deductions than Reading. And this is where you kind of think, what good is this doing? Because Reading's owners went for it, failed, and the result of their constant FFP deductions, I think, did they have 2 or 3? I know they had other deductions for non-payment of wages and horrible things of that nature. But the the situation for Reading is that the owners just basically went, oh, well, I'm not interested then, and put the club into real danger. I know that's not the kind of responsibility of the EFL, but it is certainly proof of the consequence of people breaching FFP and kind of throwing their cards in. And there at the end are the two Premier League teams that have breached and been charged in recent seasons, Nottingham Forest and Everton. And I think the Forest example particularly does add some credence to the argument of FFP not working, because the argument was, what else were Forest supposed to do when they got promoted out of nowhere, really? They were bottom of the league at the start of the season, changed manager, what was it, Lamucci to Steve Cooper, I think that's the right one. Forest have had so many managers over the years I've been doing the channel, I can't remember. But anyway, Stevie Cooper definitely came in and they went, whoop, like that. The door opened up, they won the playoffs, and all of a sudden they're in the Premier League with a lot of players out of contract. They had a lot, I think they had like 5 loan players literally in their squad for the final in the playoffs as well. And they basically either had to spend a load of money and build a new squad that would compete in the Premier League, just accept getting relegated, kind of as a result of the FFP rules. Because the argument is, well, Forest TV revenue would have just multiplied by 10x or whatever it does when you go from the Championship without parachute payments up into the Premier League. And they spent the money. Some would argue they bought too many players, but the concept of what I'm saying still stands, that FFP essentially prohibits teams that get suddenly promoted and haven't been bouncing between the two leagues spending a load of money that they've earned and trying to compete. Everton's a little bit different. My understanding is it just spent very badly and very kind of flagrantly, is that the right word to use there, over the years. Big losses. And again, look at the consequence though. Everton breached and got punished and still survived. So I know we get arguments from sort of Leeds and Southampton fans where their sides were relegated and essentially all the other teams there in and around them that season all breached. We're talking about Leicester. Leicester came down as well, but Forest and Everton obviously breached and then survived. So you kind of, in a sporting sense, and sporting is relevant because the penalties are for points deductions, aren't they? So it's not like fines and balance sheet stuff. So from a sporting sense, there are big implications. And is it good or bad after teams get punished? Look, why did it come in the first place? Spending controls and the risk of clubs going bust. So I don't know we're going to have many of these in the comments. If you're a proponent of FFP and P&S in its current guise, you could argue, well, it has stopped some crazy owners. And, you know, the stories of clubs going bust, there's always going to be crazy owners doing silly things further down the pyramid in particular. But nobody's gone bust in terms of EFL. I know people have mentioned sort of Southend and Bury, I guess, going super close, and Bury ceasing for a short while. But I suppose that's the argument there. But I think it's just doing weird things to competition now, and we're seeing, you know, the likes of Sheffield Wednesday and Reading get relegated with points deductions. We're seeing the likes of Forest and Everton survive with points deductions. Leicester go down and breach, and we had that ridiculous situation as well. And Leeds and Southampton, as we mentioned, in terms of the Premier League, not breaching and people around them breaching and all of this stuff. Look, it doesn't work in my opinion, but I do think there needs to be some kind of spending controls. You know, my big bugbear is the EFL and the Premier League not being one entity, or at least not working together. I think that causes a lot, 80-90% of the problems in English football. That's an aside. So if we're talking about fixing structural things and overspending and the likelihood of clubs going bust and distribution of money, then before you sort any FFP, P&S rules out, can we either amalgamate the Premier League and the EFL, or at least have them working together, have a body that means they have to be able to sort of coexist. I mean, we talked about the cliff edges in money, and if the jurisdiction issue that Leicester managed to, I was going to say weasel through, they didn't weasel through it, they drove a blooming P&O ferry through it, didn't they? But if that's not evidence enough that having the two bodies is just not very helpful, particularly with how they interact, then I don't know what is. But look, all we had in the EFL stadium sales, didn't we? I can't remember all the teams that did it. Reading, Darby, Villa, Sheffield Wednesday. Name the others in the comments. That Stoke, that stole their stadium to themselves. Come on. Ridiculous, isn't it? We've had creative transfers, particularly around homegrown players this season, where certain clubs have gone, oh, well, okay, he's on the balance sheet for nothing, and if we quickly sell him, then we'll raise a load of money, and then it just so happens that another club in a similar position might have sold the player across, and on the one hand, you kind of go, oh, that doesn't smell great, and then on the other hand, you go, well, the clubs are doing what they can to, you know, to kind of move around, and you know, that's the kind of tip of the iceberg in terms of loopholes and jurisdictions and stadium sales and all of that. And then rushing these transfers where, oh, we need to sell this player by June the 30th for the accounting year, and then we're going to move the accounting year. It's all a little bit ridiculous, isn't it? Now, what clubs, the hoops they're having to jump through to satisfy FFP when, as I said a few minutes ago, the crux of this is, as football fans, we want the ecstasy of victory and the agony of defeat. We want goals, we want entertainment. We don't want points deductions and accountants and court hearings and jurisdiction and account year endings. I mean, for God's sake, where have we got with this? I don't have a great solution, whether it's the Premier League doing it or the EFL or the independent regulator. I'll put that over to you in the comments. I think there needs to be some kind of spending control just to stop the whole idea of, I don't know, Club A being able to... when some trillionaire buys a Premier League club and decides that they're literally just going to sign every player known to humankind, then you do need some spending controls to have at least some kind of fair playing field. But I think what I'm putting out here today is that it's time for a change, isn't it? I think the Leicester thing is, you know, it's embarrassing, but it's certainly another big flag saying, look, sort this out. And the Man City thing, particularly with the Premier League now going to have to really iron out associated third-party transactions, that's a big, big deal as well. And it's just not really working, in my humble opinion. Let me know your thoughts. Does it work? Yes or no? If yes, give me your reasons. And if no, what would you do to change it? And to the title of this video, is this the end for FFP? Can you see a big change coming in the immediate future? Get involved in the comments. Let's try and keep calm. And please do something for me. Think about the bigger picture. Think about the entire game. There's always so much whataboutery in these conversations about how it affects your club particularly. Let's try and do our best to think about all of the clubs in the pyramid, if at all possible. FFP debate for a Friday. Get in the comments, let it burn. Away you go.